Ready?
Yep.
Going live.
Hey y'all, I am James Wright and welcome to my shop. And I'm here again with Dave, who is going to be helping us with the side table. So if you are new to the project, we are building a side table live, and this is the 4th of 5. Hopefully we'll have it in 5. And we're actually building it live with Dave, who's newer to hand tools, so we can kind of see things from not only the perspective of what I normally do, but from someone who is newer in it, and I can help him guide him through some things. So if you want, we have plans available on the website. They are completely free. There are links to them in the description, so if you want to hop down there and grab those. Other than that, I think that's... Oh, I do have one announcement. August 7th will be the MWTCA meet in Garfield, Wisconsin. It is one of my favorite of the whole year. It is a really, really cool one. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to miss it.
Garfield, Illinois?
Garfield, Illinois. Thank you. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to miss it. But if you are looking for deals, that is the one to go to. It is phenomenal. Didn't you go to that one?
I was at that one last year.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that one because there's one guy who comes and has piles of tools for $1 and $5 and $10, and yeah, you can find a lot in there. I usually decent, great user jointers for 30, 35 bucks, and just all around, it's a fantastic place to find deals. So if you're gonna be anywhere near, this is one of the few where you don't have to be a member to go to it. You still have to pay the entrance fee. You actually have to pay a higher entrance fee if you're not a member, and you can't get in until, I think they open up at 10 o'clock for everyone, or 9 o'clock, something like that. But if you're a member, then you can get in at 7 o'clock, and so you can snack those deals early. Snag those deals early. But if you're not a member, you should be a member. The MWTCA does a lot of cool things and has several publications that come out yearly. It's 25 bucks for a year. It's just it's a great group to be a part of. So tonight we are going to kind of bring it all together. We're going to be talking about a lot of little things that don't fit into any other particular step. There's lots of little finishing details we have to talk through. And then we have these tops that don't look much like tops. So we're going to talk through that, as well as the gluing up of this. So we're going to try and march through a bunch of different topics and show some of the techniques. A lot of the things we're talking about in here are things we've already shown how to do, but we're bringing them together in different ways. So it's one of the nice things about this project is I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. It is just a very, very basic table knocked down to the raw elements of a shaker table. So I'm going to flip this over and take it apart. And we get it up in there. So I'm going to put it together upside down like this. It makes it far easier to put everything together. If you're trying to do it on its side, then you always have boards that are popping in and out. If you do it upright, then they slide together and apart a little bit more forgivingly because all of the weight is in one line. So take them all apart. First thing we want to talk about is, before we do the glue up, we need to make sure all of our finishes are clean and ready. Because after you glue this all up together, it gets really hard to get into things and clean them up and smooth them. You can, but it's annoying to do it. It's much better if everything is just the way it should be ahead of time. And also, I mean, there's always a little bit of some things that are out of focus. Ooh, come on, bring me back in. There we go. You know, pencil marks and...
You might want to switch your camera.
Oops, sorry. Some pencil marks, and there's always nicks and other things. We're trying to leave things until the very end. Well, now we're at the very end, and we really want to clean this up and make it nice. First question is, what do you want the corners to look like? You can leave them sharp and clean. Most people are going to take a block plane and run it once down the corner just to knock the edge over. You don't want a sharp edge that will cause splinters, and you grab it, it just doesn't feel very good. My personal preference is a fairly heavy chamfer. I like about an 1/8 inch chamfer all the way on all sides. So I'll do a chamfer up at the top as well as all the way down the tapers of the legs. Some people will do a bead. You can actually do a corner bead. You can do that with a scratch stock, which I had a couple videos of making those. And those make pretty quick work of making a bead. You can actually make one that comes in at 45 degrees at the corner and runs a bead right down the corner. If you want to do the French style, you can actually inlay some banding, but yeah, this is a beginner project. We'll leave that one for the French. What's that?
Wee.
Now, one of the problems with the chamfering, have you decided what you wanted for yours?
Not really. I mean, probably just some kind of basic chamfer, but
Okay.
yeah.
What I like to do, and what you can do is get a chamfer plane that will give you the exact size. Or I have these add-ons that I can put on one of my planes. They actually bolt on the side. And there's another one on the other side that create a chamfered face in there. So you can get the exact same chamfer every time. Usually I only use those if I'm doing a lot of it. And this isn't that much. And this is where a block plane really comes out. Is I'll put it in a dog hole and drop the leg on the ground. Put it in a dog hole and then just right down the corner. And what you can do is count how many strokes you take. 2, 3, 4. And you can see, how does that angle look? I don't know how well this is going to show up on here, but we have sharp corner and 4 strokes on the chamfer plane. And it's just a very, very light chamfer. I want to do it a little bit heavier than that. So I'm going to do another angle over here. And the other thing is, with the tapered angles, tapered legs, it makes it really easy because all of the grain kind of runs out the side. So you're almost always going with the grain if you go down towards the feet. Whereas if you go the other way, you're almost always running into the grain. But you're always going to be playing the game in the middle of a board with running into the grain or against the grain. Let's see, where is, let me do a couple up here. There, that's about what I like. So we've got on here the sharp corner. Make sure I get a little more focus. We got the light chamfered corner and the heavy chamfered corner. So you can kind of play around with what you want. And if you just count the number of strokes, that lets you know how deep your chamfer is. And theoretically, they should all be about the same. This is one place where people really get bent out of shape on 2 particular ways. Number one, is this at 45 degrees? Can you tell if that's at 45 degrees or not?
No.
If you're off 10 degrees one way or the other, you can't tell. It's one of those things that if it looks good, that's all it is. This is just something for looks. And so if it looks good to you, then it's good. You don't have to make it perfect. There's absolutely no reason, no one's going to be coming to your house and coming in with calipers and like, oh, he was off 3 degrees. It doesn't matter. So you can have a little bit of fun, experiment, try new things. And you know, if you really want to have some fun, do something different on each corner or on the back legs and the front legs, and you can try things out. This is an experimental piece. It's very quick and easy to make up another one. So if you want to make them out of something to experiment with, have some fun, try something out. So here, why don't you do one of mine? Because I'm going to be putting a really heavy chamfer on those.
Okay.
Because you don't know what you want on it yet. And I gave you this one because it has a knot in here and some swirly grain. So what you'll feel is occasionally, like it'll go with the grain here, and then at this point it goes against the grain.
All right.
And if you're ever wondering, here's another thing, you can actually wrap your fingers around, here, let me show this. So when you're doing it, you can wrap your fingers around the block plane so that they kind of create that 45-degree feel for you.
Almost like a fence.
So yeah, you can feel when it's at 45 degrees because it's pushing on fingers on both sides.
Try that. Kind of like that?
Yeah. And then you just run your thumb and middle finger on it, and it lets you know, you get an idea about how you're feeling. Now, if you have a shave horse, this is a great place for it, and you can even use a spoke shave to do it. And a shave horse makes it really quick for something spindle work like this because you can clamp it and do half of it. But the problem is you have to do half at a time and half at a time, so you have to kind of feather it back and forth. But again, this is just aesthetics. So if it looks good, then it is good.
Oops.
Now you'll hear this point up in here where you're kind of going against the grain. It's a little chippy there. Mm-hmm. If you're running into that and you do have grain that switches, sharpen your blade, take a thinner cut, and you're generally going to be okay. Chamfers aren't that big a deal. But if it is annoying you, then you're kind of up a creek without a paddle on something small like that. That's one of the things about a block plane is that it is a low angle plane. You can put a higher angle like you can with a low angle jack plane, but you have the mouth to close. So as long as you're taking a thin shaving, the iron is small, the mouth is closed, your tear out is going to be unbelievably small. You're not going to be able to see it. So
All right.
don't worry about it. On the stretchers, I usually put a chamfer. I don't do anything at the top because that's going to be on the top of the table. I'll put a chamfer on the bottom edge of both of those. And so again, experiment, try new things. This would be a great place if you want to do some beading. Put in some beading along the bottom edge, in an 1/8 inch or so, and you get a nice bead running all the way around the table. It's a great place to experiment. And I love experimenting, if you haven't noticed.
So I know I don't know what it is. I don't know if everyone else on the chat does. What is beading?
Beading is, I don't have my cutter in here. I don't have it in that one either. I probably have a bead down here from one of my, there we go, here's a bead. So this is a bead. So it's a rounded profile. Let's see if I can get that in focus. And so you have this rounded kind of half of a pipe running through the wood. And it creates a bead on the face. And so you could have this bead running along the front edge of your board to create a little bit of a detail down there. Beading is, particularly on corners, is kind of a historical way of protecting the corner. So if people bump into it, it's not going to ding it up quite so easily. I kind of like chamfers for that because a chamfer is pretty much the most sturdy thing you could have, whereas a bead, there's a little bit more detail to it. So you're going to want to go through these, and as all the parts are separate, clean them up. Take your smoothing plane and one last pass on every surface. Any of the marks you have, clean those up. Maybe a card scraper. Kind of just make sure everything is the way you want it. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some stuff that's upstairs. 400 grit sandpaper, or like 300 grit sandpaper. And for oak, I like doing that because what it's going to do is actually fill all of the pores with dust. And what that ends up doing is it draws in the oil a little bit deeper. It doesn't give you a more sturdy finish, but it gives you a richer, thicker color from it. So the deeper the oil gets into the wood, the darker the tone is. In particular for oak, where you have that medullary rays. Medullary rays don't soak up anything, or very, very little. So those stay very light, and everything else around them gets dark, so you get to pop those out more. Now, if you're working with something like maple or pine, don't sand it, plane it. The last thing you do is touch it with a plane, because what's going to happen there is you're going to get a blotchy texture on there. There's going to be areas in the wood that will naturally soak up more, and if you put dust into them, that will pull the oil down even farther. So sanding those woods is not a great thing to do. But yeah, the last thing I'm going to do is touch it all with 400 grit sandpaper. So the big thing for today is working on the top. I'm just going to set all these.
All right.
Ooh,
Thunder.
Yeah, if we suddenly disappear, we've probably lost power. Sorry. We're kind of prone to that here. On the top, our tops, according to the plans, are 18 by 18. And these are not 18 by 18. And so this is where we're going to spend most of the time today, is actually how do you go about making this into something that's square and true, and how do we clean that up. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I'm going to grab some dogs down here, drill holes in the end of my bench for my dogs to fit in. And I'm going to do it this way. Except for that one's not going to be a good one to do. Yeah, I should have enough space. Picking the right dog. Hey, it's going to work. Yeah, mine doesn't have that much glue squeeze out. How's yours looking for glue
mine's
squeeze out?
got lots of glue squeeze out.
Let's put yours on there then. So first thing we got to do is get rid of all the glue from the work on here. And we've got a lot of glue squeeze out on these boards, and sometimes if they're not perfectly true, you'll have one that's higher than the other. So I'm going to come in with a chisel, bevel down, and naturally the bevel should be about here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to lower the handle a little bit so that the tip isn't touching the surface. I'm riding on the back of the bevel. So my tip is a little bit higher, and with that stabbing motion, I can very, very quickly ply through all of that. And I'm just getting off those big bits. But just keeping the tip up so I'm not digging into the wood allows you to run through it really quickly. And yes, I use my good chisels. I mean, some people want to use the cheaper ones, great. But yeah, it works. Then card scraper, come in. In this case, I'll find a good edge. No, I know I have a sharp edge on here somewhere. I was just using it. Hey, there's a sharp edge. I want to get these curls coming up in here. And we're going to come in here and clean off any excess glue. And usually with this, if there's any imperfection between one side and the other, that's where I will focus on one side or the other. But this one is actually really, really good. So here, if you feel it, it still has the surface from the thickness planer.
Right.
So we can come through and plane this out, but it's really, really close. I mean, it's not anything major. Sometimes when you come in, you clean that out, you actually create a bit of a valley here. And so you can come into the plane, but the plane won't actually get anything here in the middle because it's riding in that valley. So you have to do a few strokes out over here, a few strokes out over here, and then you can get in the middle. But this one needs a little bit over the whole thing, except I'm going against the grain there. Except for, yeah, this one I don't remember if we did it right, because a lot of times with these boards you have one that's going with the grain and one that's going against the grain. So let's see what we got. This one's against the grain, so I did that. Yeah, so this one is against the grain, so this one will be with the grain. Oh yeah, that was nice. Look at that, beautiful shaving. So what you can do is you shave one side really, really well. And I get this one all clean. Move those over. I've got this little ridge over here that I'm not hitting this area here. So I'm wondering if that was a planer snipe from the thickness planer. I'm working my way across the board, cleaning it out, getting the surface pretty close to it. The problem is when I get to this joiner here, how do I plane this direction here and this direction here? And what I'm usually going to do is I'm going to try and get a little bit over on the edge, or I can get a higher angle plane that will do it better. But I'm just going to stay really close to this edge. And here, you can see this line right here is the glue line. So I'm over a quarter inch or so. And then I can flip the board around. And I can do the same thing from the other side and try that out. So here, why don't you do the other side then?
All right.
And so now I'm planing with the grain. And any marks I made from that first pass going off have disappeared.
Okay.
And so I'm just going to do 1 or 2 passes all the way across until I get a nice clean shaving on all of it. Although a lot of times I will leave this step until after I've actually shaped this to square. Sometimes I like to do it beforehand. Kind of comes down to what you like to do.
All right.
So here.
So I start with the scraper.
Start with the chisel because we
the
got
chisel,
a
that's right.
glue on here.
I forgot a step.
Here.
All right. And let's see.
Any questions right now, babe?
We've had several.
Okay.
I'm just going to go in order. So Hopman6 asked, when making the top, would the tongue and groove make it more stable or just glue up more than enough?
No, tongue and groove won't make it stronger or more stable. Just glue it up. That's all you need. Let me show you something here. What you end up doing is you'll start out at the right angle, and as you move forward, this lowers, and so it's just sliding over the top of everything. The trick is actually keeping it at that same angle
Okay.
all the way across.
And also, you're skewing a little more than I was.
A little bit.
Yeah. I like putting your palm on there too. It helps keep it at the
Yeah.
angle. Right?
That's going to be a natural thing. Anytime you're moving, is your arm
Right.
is
Especially if I'm
rotating
staying
from
back here. That's
the
why.
fulcrum.
Yeah.
And so that's a skill you're going to use throughout woodworking, whether it's doing this or whether it's sharpening. You're always have this circular motion, saw work, and the more you can get used to having this fulcrum fighting against this fulcrum, so that you get a straight movement at the hand, that makes the difference.
like I'm not getting as much as I should.
Well, then some people like to just use a scraper.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or you can use a cheap one and come in. I don't have a junk one here right now, do I? Oh, this one's kind of junk-ish. Is you can come in here, put it vertical, and just scrape off.
Oh, kind of like a heavy-duty scraper.
Yeah. And there's all sorts of different different methods and ways that people handle glue screw out. This is just the way that I like to do it.
I feel like part of it is learning what the correct angle is.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I know I don't want to be like I would if I was trying to cut the wood, but I think I was going a little too far away.
And this is also Elmer's Wood Glue Max, which is my favorite stuff. It isn't brittle, and so you're cutting into it is almost like cutting into a clay, and so it peels off like something that's much, much softer. And I really like that about it, but it means that this is much harder to clean off and you squeeze out. Mm-hmm. You got another question, babe?
Yeah. Let's see. Michael Curry. For square legs, I prefer a stopped chamfer. Any thoughts about stopped chamfers or beads?
Yeah, I might have to show that a little bit later when we do the chamfer on the tabletop. The stopped chamfer just means you have to do it with a chisel. Or get close to it with other tools, and then the chisel comes in to do that final scoop in. Yeah, it's a great way to do it. I don't like it as much. I just like that clean look of the chamfer running all the way up, but if you like it, great. But I'll show that when we get to this. Yeah, I think you're to the point where the card scraper is probably going to do a little bit faster.
Sounds good. And it's like this, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So you want to start it high, and then slowly lean it forward until you feel it catching.
Okay.
Let me make sure I've given you the right edge.
Yeah.
It's forward. Yep. That one. All right, so what I'm also going to be doing is, flip over to this one, is I think the middle is actually, yeah, the middle's a little worn out because I was using this on the tabletop. So I will like move over here to the side.
Okay.
And so I can move my thumbs over here, or over here, or here. And so I have 3 different spots on this side. Then I have 3 different spots on this side. And then I can flip the card over and I've got each of those. So you can use it for a while before it goes out. But this one has like a ridge here. So I always want to back up and then take a running hit at that ridge to smooth it out. Because if you're starting that ridge, you're always going to catch and then bounce out.
Okay. Let's see, so come over here.
Yeah. Ooh, grab the chisel out of the way. Don't need a cut up knuckle.
Yeah.
Anytime you're working with epoxy, the card scraper is a great way to come in and really clean it out and detail the surface. It munches through epoxy beautifully. Also, if you ever find that your thumbs are getting sore or you just don't have the strength to bend it, a cabinet scraper can be a great thing to have. Let me see if this one's sharp. So it's basically the same thing. You're pushing with your thumbs, but you're not actually bending it. You're using your whole hand to push it. And so in this,
Cool.
and especially in this case where you have grain one side and grain the other side direction, this doesn't matter which grain you go. It's a little bit dull, so I'm getting a bit of dust out. Why don't you give that a try?
All right. I'm going to use a cabinet scraper.
When it's dull, you're going to need to put a little more down pressure. Actually, let me give it a little bit more tension. There you go. Yeah. Now you're chasing, at this point, you're chasing that staining.
Right, yeah.
And then the only way to get that is to take off a layer with
Oh,
the
okay,
smoothing
with the plane. Got it.
Make sure, back this up just a hair.
Yeah, because other than that, yeah, it feels smooth even that, yeah.
Yeah. And so this is great for this point where you're going with the grain and against the grain. This doesn't matter which direction you're going with the grain. I may advance it a little more. So I backed it up a hair. Yeah, this is when it's against the grain.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'll come over here.
And if it's getting tight, here, let me give you, where'd it go? I'll just grab this block. Here. If you ever waxed
Oh.
a sole before?
Yeah.
Okay. Especially for smoothing planes, it's just so nice because suddenly it slides. I've had several people ask me, "Oh, yes." I wonder if it is switching over here. It's skipping a little
forget
bit.
Yeah.
So this board, yeah, but look at this. The grain on this. This board, I bet, is actually in the board itself, twisted.
So there's like.
So you'd be with the grain here, against the grain here, against the grain here, and then with the grain
it's like
here.
every 3 or 4 inches of switches.
You picked a good one, man.
Oh yeah.
That's one of the things about white oak is it's all over the place. It's a lot of fun.
Is that why white oak and I get along so well for you?
Cool. Well, we'll leave this because we're going to
Yep.
come back and do this later.
All right. Sounds
Let's
good.
actually work on turning this thing into a square. So the first thing we need is to give ourselves a true face. That can be on the end grain. It can be on the long grain. Usually I like to start with the long grain. But if you want the seam to be in the middle of the board, you're going to need to cut off some off both sides. Or you can cut off one or the other. On this one, you've got knots over here, so I don't know where you want it to be.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of thinking of putting this sort of in the middle.
We have
this
18
white-
inches, so you've got 5 inches of extra splay on here. And this one, we don't have that much this way.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking of kind of going like
Right down the
here,
middle?
sort
All right,
more or
then in
less.
that case, let's start with one of the long edges as giving our true edge.
Okay.
So, which one is going to require the least amount of work? I think that one. Does that look good to you?
Sure.
Put that in the vise. And this is one of the places where I love a low angle plane. Yeah. And in this case, if you had a really good shooting board, you could put it on there and basically do the exact same thing. But because we don't have a true edge, you would be squaring it to who knows what.
Yeah.
Right now, all we want to do is get this a nice flat true edge. Because we're going to be cutting off a good chunk of the other side, it doesn't matter if we blow out the grain on this end, because that's board we're cutting off.
Right.
Also, if you are keeping those, all you have to do is plane from one side almost to the other and stop. And what you'll end up doing is creating your plane will slowly work down and down and down. And then you turn around and go the other way, and you don't hit that far edge, and you just bring it down until it's flat. And so you can shoot the whole thing without going out the ends. So what we're going to do here is we got this high spot here in the middle, so I'm going to start here. And you can hear it skip, skip, boom, boom, skip, skip. And so you can see the spots where I'm not getting anything here. And I'm cutting, so I've got from here to here and here to here, missing in the middle, a little bit over there. And I just want to go until I get one shoot, one curl that goes all the way across. Here, why don't you give that a try then?
All right.
It is a pain because it's up high. And I was just doing a dining room table this last week. The surface was up here, and I actually had to get on top of the bench. Here, let me turn around this way. I'll show them this.
So I've got the second half good, but I still got to get the first half caught up with it.
And cutting cross grain is always a pain, but it is fun when you actually get those curls that come out. Get back out of the way. Don't grab the cable. Now the other thing to think about is it square? And did I drop my nice bevel gauge on the floor? So we can put this on here and you see, is it square or not? It's not actually square. Does it need to be square?
Well, probably not, because it's not referencing anything, and it's probably going to have not be. Yeah.
The only thing that needs to be square too is your eye, because that's where everything comes due. You're going to look at the table and you say, is that edge square? So, I mean, you can look at it and say, is it square? Oh, no, you're not going to do that to a table. You're going to be
Right,
looking
I know,
at
but I'm
this
saying,
angle.
well, that's
Yeah.
true too, yeah. But if it looked square like that, then I would be sure. It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so that's one of the things where you could come in with a square and really detail it out. I'm really not going to worry because I'm going to be chamfering both edges. So the only edge that's going to be square is going to be a little bit down the middle. And in that case, I'm going to be referencing off of 245 degrees. it's going to be almost impossible to tell when that's square.
Right.
So as long as I'm getting a shaving from one end to the other, or I'm only, I don't even have to get the first 2 inches on either side, so we're cutting out the middle, we're good. So, you want that, or you want to go a little farther?
I'll do one more to see. I think it was pretty good, but let's see. There's like one skip in the middle, but is that just me, or
No,
is
it's right here. You're actually bouncing up over there. Let me just get rid of that. Let's see if it's... Yeah, it's catching on that, and when it catches, then you bounce over it.
Right.
And so every time you do that, you build that hump a little bit higher.
And that's just because of the way the grain is coming right here, right? Yeah.
There.
All right, cool. Well, I guess I don't know if I... Yeah, that was
There
good.
you go.
All
You
right.
get these beautiful ingrained shavings.
Yeah.
In oak, it's so much fun. So we now have our reference edge, or I guess it's a reference end. And on that, we want to judge everything else off. Except for I want to have it over here, because the one thing we want to make sure we get rid of is these knots over here.
Right, right.
So we want to square off. If we have this seam in the middle, 18 divided by 2 is 9 inches. So if we come over 9 inches from there, oh yeah, we're golden.
Yeah.
So there's a couple different ways we can do this. This edge may not be square to this glue line. And if it is, if you want it to be that, then you have to go back and plane this to what it should be. But again, it's to eye. Does that look?
Yeah, I think it looks fine, and I mean, it's all wavy. If these were perfectly straight, then it could look funny. But given how much,
and that's actually a really nice glue line. I mean, that's actually gonna be hard to see once it's all finished. So in that case, if you can't see it, you're not going to see it in the future. Right. So now we want to mark out approximately where 9 inches is. So 9 inches is here. Just going to put one tick mark. And then grab, oh, it's over here, just saying. Problem of having 7 projects going at once. There it is, my big square. So we have our reference edge over here. We're going to put this on the reference edge. We could measure out 9 inches from here and 9 inches from here and snap a line. But if this isn't square to this, then that means that our corner won't be square then.
Right.
And again, is it going to make that big a difference? Probably not. But you'll have a better chance of seeing this out of square than you will seeing that glue line out of square, because the glue line's in the middle of the board.
And especially if it's like close to the frame, and if it's square, then
well, I mean, the frame will be warped a little bit to match the table, because you'll move the frame the same distance from the inside out. So we're going to find, where's that mark? There it is. Slide this over and cut our line. And in this case, I am running. There it is. I went off the line. My knife followed the grain. Make sure, right there. In this case, my square doesn't go all the way across. So that means I need to buy a bigger square. Why is nothing where I left it?
what are you looking for?
A straight edge. I had an aluminum straight edge here. Oh, it's over there. That angle iron will work fine. So we can put this on here, put the knife into this line, and then bring it over to the line, and we can just extend that line all the way across. And so now we have our start line. So we can rip that down and plane that smooth, and then we have our 2 edges. From those, we just measure off 18 inches and 18 inches. 33, okay, we're good. So let's go rip this one down.
Okay.
Because this is another skill that's hard to learn, but is a basic skill of everything else, is that's long rips. Move this out. I'm going to turn the camera around here in a moment. I'm going to turn this one around. Any questions while I'm setting this up?
Yeah. Whoa. Sorry.
You hit a
I
button?
had updates and I was not ready for that. Dennis Meko asked earlier, can you sand a chamfer?
Sure. Yeah, either what you do is you get a hard block that doesn't wrap around the edges, or with something like 400 grit, 300 grit, it softens the edges of the chamfer, but it doesn't reshape it. And usually I'm just going to, with my 300, 400 grit, just run it down. And it's usually like 5 or 6 strokes on every surface. It doesn't take much at all to just put a tiny bit of really, really fine dust into the grain. So, big saw. And I'm going to put a mark into this because it's hard to see things over there. Don't normally do that, but in this case I'm going to just put a pencil line that is broken into that one. Make it stand out just a hair more. So let's go over here to the bench. 3. And I have a saw bench. And got a dining room table over here in the way. So let me move this out of the way so I can get through that. I've got 2 dining room tables in progress here. Hopefully the first video on that will come out this weekend. So when doing this, if you can, knee here, hand here to hold it. And I actually like these spikes out here because now I can slide this over and I can just grab that. And so that gives me more strength in here. Knee on this side. I'm just going to start it. And cut it down. Here, why don't you give that a try?
All right.
Slide out behind you. And I'm going to step over here, move the camera. So what we're looking at is we want it to be all straight. Can you pause for a moment? Just wait a
Yep.
moment. What we're looking at is we want the saw here, hold it like you'd be cutting it. The saw is perfectly in line with his arm, up the elbow, and all the shoulder. So the shoulder is right on top of the saw, straight down. Everything is a nice straight line. That'll give you the cleanest cut you can. Nice, finish it up. Let the saw do the work. Ta-da! Little boards out of big boards.
Yeah.
So now, I can bring that back over here. I wonder why I need a bigger shop. I was talking with someone who's like, why do you need a bigger shop if, you know, I don't need a big, well, it's not about the shop for woodworking, but for videoing. Yeah.
So if you get a bigger shop, does that mean I get my bench back?
You get your whole corner of the shop.
Oh, I get a whole.
Have to build you your own tool wall then.
You know that means that I own those tools and you can't use them.
Pretty much. So what we've got here is this board, really nice clean line. A little bit off here, but in the right direction. So everything on this is golden. We just need to clean this up and bring it right back to that line.
Okay.
So to do that, we're going to do this again. Actually, let me do it down here. So I got the leg vise. So let's show that. So with the leg vise, I can clamp it down here. And if the board is really long, it's one thing I don't like about wheels. You don't get a whole lot of friction. If the board is really long, you can actually put a pipe clamp out across this way and clamp the other side.
Right.
Or if it's long enough, I'd put it on my other leg vise. The only problem with this is the line is on the other side.
Can we just flip? Oh, but then the grain's the wrong.
Then the grain's the wrong direction. So let's grab. Yeah, you're good and sharp, and it's a lot longer than it needs to be, but it's jointing the board again. So have fun with it.
All right. Let's see.
Any questions while we set this up? Now, one of the things we've got is we're really close to the line here. We started right on the line,
Oh yeah.
and that side.
So should I like start back here?
Yeah, so if you start in the middle, then you're always going to be riding on, here, let me show this. You're always going to be riding on this back heel. And if you're always riding on this heel, you're never going to cut this couple inches here, because we know we're right about where we want to be. So as long as we use that as a reference face, we'll be pretty good all the way across the board. Got a question?
Let's see. DavidG said to put a bead into an apron, would you use a beading tool or a wooden plane?
I would probably use a scratch stock. For most beads, I like using a scratch stock. Or the Stanley beading tool. The beading tool can refer to both a beading plane and a scratch stock. That is my preference. Now you're right about on that line. So why don't you just take one stroke from all the way, because you've got a little bit of rough surface right here still.
All right.
Or 2 or 3 strokes, whatever it's going to take. Ooh, that sounded really nice.
Yeah, there we go, I think.
Cool. And because we're going to be chamfering this, it doesn't have to be right on that line.
Oh, right,
Clean.
yeah.
Here, grab the board for a moment. So what we've got is a mess.
Should I put this back, or are we going to use this more?
Oh, we'll use that in a moment.
Okay.
So now we have, find the right edges here. We have our original edge and our new, our original edge and our new edge. So these two are true. So everything needs to be judged off of those. And I could come in with the square and mark this off. But at this point, I want whatever I do parallel to this other side. So I'm usually going to come in with tape measure or something like that. And I'll mark off 18 inches and 18 inches and snap a line. Because if my square isn't long enough to reach across and my radius is a straight edge, might as well not. But however, we're going to have a problem with this side over here. And this is one I want to show. Oop, not there. Exit. There we go. That's what I want to see. On this side, when we come over here.
Whoa, hang on.
What?
You need to sharpen that image.
There we
Much
go.
better.
So on this side, 18 inches is a little over an 1/8 inch away. So we're really, really close. And usually my preference with the second side is to come in with a saw and cut it off. Now, could you cut that with a saw?
I don't know.
And so that's going to come down to your personal skill. Because we have, what is that, 3/16? Yeah, right about 3/16. We got about a 1/4 inch down here. Oh, but we go down to like an 1/8 inch down at this corner. Actually, almost a 1/16 right at the edge. A saw is faster. A saw is more fun for me. And then you come in with the plane and smooth it off, and a couple passes and you're golden, it's happy. But doing a really, really thin line with a saw can be difficult. And if you veer either direction, you run into problems. You veer into the board while you're making your board smaller. You veer away from it, and you end up with that thin line that just busts off. And so you have to kind of ask yourself, which way do you want to go? For me, I've gotten to the point where the skill, I'm gonna cut it with a saw. But if you haven't gotten to that point, you're gonna spend more time with a plane. And when we're cutting off a 1/4 inch at this end, 1/4 inch of end grain it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Oh, this is end grain, I forgot.
Yeah, and so that's where you're going to work with, because a cross grain cut is really nice, and you're always going to get a little bit of splinter out with the cross grain cut, but that's not a problem because we're going to come in and chamfer the edges. So what time we have? 42. We got that. Yeah, I don't think we're going to have time to do that. So at this point, we're going to be cutting off the end the exact same way we just cut off one of those sides, if you want to use it with a saw. If you're going to do it with the plane, you're going to put it in here. And this one would probably be a little bit easier, though with the end grain you end up putting a little bit more down pressure, and so it's going to want to slip a little bit more on you. So that's actually pretty decent. Just wish I got a different wheel. This thing, the wheel doesn't give you as much leverage,
It's like
so you can't crank it down as much. But that one,
oh yeah, it's just a longer lever arm.
yeah, I've put that one, what was it, 2,500 pounds of clamping force, so yeah. And so in this case, my low angle's over there, but what you'd have is this end we have almost a 1/16 inch to take off. Very, very little. This end we have about a 1/4. And so I'd start here and just focus on this spot for a little while. And then after a little while longer, I'd go 5 inches.
Almost kind of like when we were tapering the legs.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing because you're cutting a taper off. But if you have the skill to do it with a saw, do it with a saw. It's much faster, much simpler. And then you just come in and you're going to do the same thing clamping up in here, but you're only going to do a couple passes and you're just cleaning it up. So, you know, at this point, it's the exact same thing we did on the other sides. Make this 18 inches away from here, and then cut this off 18 inches away from here. So the next question is, what edge do you want to put on it? I have my preferred edge is this. This is actually a sample board I'm making for the dining room tables. I'm making them for friends of mine. And so what I've got on here is, yet again, something else that's out of focus. I've got a big 1/4-inch chamfer on here. And I like a really heavy chamfer on the edge. Because if your wrist is resting on a table, that chamfer just feels good. And then on the bottom, I do a pillow on this. So it's in about 1 inch, and then it's down a little over 1/8 inch. And so I've got this really tapered chamfer on the front edge. So this is the bottom of the table. So what happens is it ends up looking like a thinner tabletop, which gives it a lighter feel. And then you got that natural edge on there that feels nice, because a chamfer is, well, a chamfer is really the thing that separates us from the animals. So, yeah, and so, I gotta show how to do that though. When actually doing it in the chamfers, I like to grab a pair of dogs. And am I gonna have enough space? Nope, I gotta go to the next one. And I'll have it overhang the edge of the bench. And put it in like this. And with it on like that, now I can grab my plane, and I can do the exact same thing I did before and chamfer it out. Or I could grab it with the block plane that we did before. Exact same thing. The only difference is on the end grain here, because everything else we're chamfering long grain. Let me focus over here, come on. 3. You don't want to go straight across the board. You don't want it to be in line with the board. You actually want to skew it a little ways so that this end comes up higher. And what happens is then your blade is almost pushing off the end of the board, and that stops you from tearing out these fibers. So when I come across, I'm going to be at a skewed angle like that. And I get these great little curly cues that come out of it. And that will give you that edge. Which I realized I was doing that on your board. I hope you want a chamfer on there.
Sure.
Sorry.
That's all right. No,
This is the bottom, so. But yeah, clamping it between dogs on the tabletop makes it so much easier to do that. Just like if you ever do raised panel cabinet doors, I do it the exact same way on there. Or if I'm ever pillowing a bottom to fit into a drawer bottom groove. There we are. There's so many things you can do with a dog. It's just a great work holding device. 47. There, we got that. Glue up. I told you we're getting into a bunch of things tonight. When it comes to glue up, this is where the scary things happen. And originally I was going to say let's do a glue up live, but that's going to take too much time to fit it into the live. And I don't have all the chamfers done, so I wouldn't be able to do it anyways. Didn't get all my homework done. Any questions while I'm setting this up, babe?
Let's see. Dennis Meko, would you bead the whole board and then cut the parts, or cut the parts and bead each individual part?
Bead each individual piece. Unless they're too small to hold on to. Beading long boards isn't faster than beading a bunch of small boards. It is ever so slightly faster because you have clamping times. But if you're doing, like in this case, we have about 18-inch long boards. So that means we have about 6 feet of boards. Well, that means I have to take 2 or 3 steps along the movement. And each of those steps is actually going to waste time. Whereas if I have one board, I'm just going chink, 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 and then I set up the next one and chink, chink. It just becomes a little bit more efficient to do the smaller ones. And so for most of the time I do that. Unless they have to be the exact same from one board to the other. Or I have something flowing from one to the other, such as like on a picture frame. In that case, I'm going to do it as one big stick. because I want them all to be exactly the same. So when I match them together, they touch. But in this case, because we have a leg in between each one, not really necessary. Glue up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all these boards and I'm going to set them top side down. And I have A, B, I have A, D, I have D, C, and we have C, B. And then I can come in with the legs and say this is corner B, which is this one. And I'm going to roughly put them all together up like this. That corner is a little bit sloppy. Oh well. They don't have to be really, really tight. Some of them are, and some of them are not. That one's going to be taking a little bit of work. But having it upside down on the table here makes it a lot easier to get everything rather than trying to run them into each other. And for the glue up, having everything easier is very important because glue ups can be very stressful. There you go. So first thing you want to do is do a test fit. Get everything up on here, and then I'm going to do a test clamp. Now, these stretchers are only 3 inches. And the problem with that is if I come in with a beam clamp or a pipe clamp, do it here in the front, I can get one across here and clamp on that way. But it has to be down at the bottom so that my other one can come across this way and clamp at the top. And what that does is it gives us uneven pressure. So I'm actually taking these 2 legs here and I'm squeezing them out this way. And I'm taking these 2 legs and I'm squeezing them in this way. And so I'll get this womp-jawed leg structure. And that's really hard. So the easiest way that gets around is you take this clamp and you put it in the middle. And then you put 2 clamps on this side, one on the top, one on the bottom, top and bottom, one in the middle here. And if your clamps are strong enough, that works great. But there's something about the uneven clamping pressure that just kind of makes me go, I want something better. And so usually in this case, where everything's tight, I turn to straps. Where is it? Up, down there. I thought I brought it over here, I didn't. And I like to use simple cinch straps. And it's missing, oh well. Such is life. Normally I'd have the cinch on the other side, but you can get 2 of these, wrap it around, and you can really crank them down. And you can put an incredible amount of pressure on there. The one problem to that is if you put 2 of them around on this one, and you have both straps on one side, they're both pulling it this way. So what you want to do is you want to put one ratchet strap on this side and one ratchet strap on this side, so they're each pulling together. It cinches the whole thing together. The other nice thing about it is you don't have these beams hanging out way on the ends. So when you're wanting to square it up and make sure it's true, you don't have all that in the way. The straps actually take up almost no space. And so cinch straps are my preferred way of doing something small like this. If the stretchers were taller, like 4 inches or more, then I could put 2 clamps on each side and I could really even out that pressure and balance everything. And usually that's the way I'm going to go then. But for something small like this, something that's not a huge amount of stress, these are phenomenal. And I use them for a lot of other glue-ups, boxes, and things like that. Oh, someone sent a super joke. Turn that off.
Did you just say a super joke?
A super joke, yes. I think I was reading his comment. Yeah, need a dad joke. Who is that?
Dennis.
Dennis? Ah, thank you, Dennis. Do you have a joke?
This says dad joke.
Oh, a dad joke. Oh, I've got to come up with one.
Pressure's on. It doesn't say mom joke.
I've said all the good ones.
Do you want me to save you?
Yeah, what do you got, babe?
Okay, hang on.
This is the reason I pay here at the big bucks.
Yeah, 0 squared really goes a lot. Hang on, let me get my mom jokes up.
That's what I want to
talk about. Ready? What do you call a mouse that swears?
What?
A cursor.
Oh.
I was actually going down the line of Cinderella. It's called Cuscus.
Aha, instead of Gus Gus. You can tell you have a daughter.
Yes, I do. You may have seen these. These are actually picture frame clamps. And they work phenomenally. They're basically the same thing. They just don't have the structure. And so these come out and you have each of these points. Oops, loosen up. Each of these points can go around a square. And let me show this a little closer. And I could put these around the whole square. And the nice thing about this is it actually clamps up from the corner. So I can get this on here. And then this tightens this block down. And so it pulls all of these straps tight around it. Unfortunately, this doesn't put a lot of clamping pressure. And if I'm going to be using a PVA, pressure is key. You're not going to starve the joint no matter what the gurus say. With PVA, you can't starve the joint. It requires that pressure to have a good contact. You have to get out as much as you can so that the wood is as close as possible together. And that is what gives PVA its best chance of long lasting. If you have hide glues you can starve the joint on that. You need some in there to act as a bonding agent. That's why hide glues are actually really good for gap filling. So if you have a lot of gaps in your joints, they're not perfect. You may want to think about using hide glue. And in that case, don't squeeze it down crazy. Just squeeze it down enough to get rid of the joints. If you're using epoxy, again, with epoxy, just squeeze it to the point where you're getting rid of any gaps. Epoxy doesn't need an immense amount of pressure. But PVAs, white glues, they need pressure. Just like I need to turn off my phone. Whew, 55. We covered a lot of information tonight. And we didn't get as much actual work done.
Well.
But this is one of those things where you get to this point in the project and it's built. All the joinery is done. But you're like halfway through the project because there are so many little details. All the chamfering, all the cleanup, all the smoothing, all of the finish sanding, the glue up, and then we have to get into the tabletop connection, and it's just one of those things yeah, there's a lot to do at this point, and it can be a crazy amount. Any last questions?
So there was a question about the glue up of could you do opposite sides, let that dry, and then clamp the other two?
You can, yes. The problem with doing it in stages is that now, when I clamp those in, those legs are locked in that orientation. Well, if the other one is at a slightly different orientation, now you have to twist the stretchers to go from one to the other, and you're introducing pressure into it. Whereas if you clamp it all at once, you can get all of the legs in the right position, you can put a square in there and check your inside, and you can get it all in place all at one time. And you know that everything is coplanar and working together. It may not be perfectly square, but everything is actually working together. If you do them individually, then they may not when you try and put the pieces together. There are some builds where you have to do the glue up in stages, but whenever possible, do the glue up all at once. Unfortunately, that's what makes glue ups stressful, is that we got to do it. And if you are having a problem with long open times, hide glues may be useful to you, especially if you mix them with the urea. Some of the liquid hide glues from Tight Bond or Old Brown, those have great open times. You can get PVAs that are longer, though they're not that much longer. If I really have problems with open time, epoxy is what I go to, because I can have an epoxy that gives me 6 hours of work time. And you can't get that with any other glue. Yeah. Next time, we're going to have a glued up tabletop, a glued up top, and we'll have the tabletop ready to go on. We're going to talk about how do we connect it, because there's lots of different ways of doing that. And lots of controversy with that. That's with everything. And then we're going to talk about finishing, and hopefully mine will be ready so we can actually apply finish to it. As I want to show you my favorite finish, which goes on really quickly. What's that?
Could we guess?
She must know if we can guess.
Could we guess your favorite finish?
Well, for this, you won't guess it. What? What do you think it is?
It's not your tradition. You're not doing. Is it one that you've done before that I would know?
Probably.
Well, your typical is your BLO, but
Yeah.
your favorite
tabletop.
is Rubio Monaco.
There you go. Yeah. Anything I'm forgetting?
I don't think so.
It's not next week. Next week is a Q&A. We're taking that off, and then we're coming back on
I think it's the
the
19th. Right?
19th. Yeah. So we'll be finishing up then. So yeah, lots of fun. Cool. I think I'll do it. I don't think I have anything else to
If
say.
you guys had questions and we didn't get to them,
Yes. Throw them in the throw me an email or a message,
Message
and
James.
I'll get to it. So on that note, I think I'll do it for now. Until next time, have a wonderful day.
bye.
Bye.
Hang on, my cursor's not coming along.
Tell
All right.
Gus.